Pike's pushed more and far up ahead. He's got out of line. Is now Pike going to have a go at Werrell? Don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin. Further down, Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such trouble. He's left on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Moving on to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolutely serious racing league. Everybody's a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's all about the entertainment,
so I hope everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is enjoying himself watching. The Burger King machine's off into the grass a little bit there as they're really bunching up now.
Coming down, does he have it? Look at Johnson! Haven't got it!
He's on the outside line though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such trouble. He's left on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's gonna do it! Big Barry!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome along back to the JP Broadcasting YouTube channel, and welcome back to the second round of Season 2 of the Sim Racing for Simpletons Formula 3 Championship. After last week's shenanigans, we come across to Suzuka, one of Japan's most famous and historic circuits, and also motor racing's most historic and famous circuits as well. In these high downforce open wheel cars, it should be a ton of fun, up through the S's, 130R, and everything in between. One of the only figure 8 circuits in the world as well. To talk you through all of the action, myself, Zach Sweeney, Dara Thacker alongside me in the commentary booth, with Dean Biggles pushing the buttons and making sure the broadcast looks nice and pretty in the background as well. Dara, welcome in, of course. Welcome to the Sim Racing for Simpletons. Welcome to JPB as well. I think we're in for a good one. Formula 3s are always a bit of fun.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I think we definitely are. I mean, Suzuka is a track where there isn't a lot of room for error. The grass and the gravel traps are very close to you. And in these F3 cars, I think we're going to see some great racing side by side, hopefully a little bit up through the S's, because, of course, when it does happen, it is mightily impressive. But there are lots of little places where you can try and make a move into the Castillo triangle, and we'll hope to see a lot of that this evening.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Of course, in store for us today is 24 laps of racing action, 10 minutes in qualifying to set the grid order for then the 24 laps of racing. Mandatory pit stop as well along the way. Shouldn't be any change of tyres, shouldn't be anything overly dramatic, but still something to consider as well. Of course, a week ago we went to the Circuit Zolder to see the debut of the second season of SR4S. In a couple of weeks we'll go to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve at Brands Hatch for round 4, the Charlotte Roval at night time, very specific for round 5, Spa, Watkins Glen and Aragon, one of the newest circuits to the iRacing service, to round off the 8-week calendar for season 2. We are just moments away from getting ourselves into qualifying. When we do, we'll talk you through the championship standings and give you a bit of insight as to how the racing so far has gone in this season. But a lot of excitement and, well, fingers crossed, we'll see even more fireworks and great racing. It is always on the cards, because when it comes to the sim racing for Simpletons, these guys always do deliver some, well, just all awesome racing, full stop. Dara, though, talking about Suzuka, I mean, you touched on the trickiness of a circuit like Suzuka, limited runoff, difficulties, keeping it on track sometimes. Are you expecting maybe qualifying to be quite important today?
Yeah, I think at a track like Suzuka, you've got to say qualifying is important. Of course, there are at those overtaking spots, like I mentioned, at Casio Triangle and at the hairpin if you're brave, but they are difficult to pull off, and it is quite a challenge to look for it as well. I mean, it's a bit like Zandvoort in that regard, that there are those opportunities, but there aren't that many, and I think qualifying is going to be important. And with only a 10-minute session, it's going to be very critical to get that lap in and get it in early, because otherwise some drivers might find themselves a little bit further back in the grid than they would have hoped to be, and they've got to give themselves a bit more work to do for the race.
Well, we are about to head ourselves into 10 minutes of qualifying. Before we do, let's take a quick look as to how the championship racks up after only one round. Of course, it's not Carson Keane leading the way. I can tell you for free, it's David Holland. 28 points to his name, ahead, of course, of the reigning champion of Mackenzie Roon in second, Brian Long. Bravo, by the way, Brian Long getting himself up onto the podium there in third. Modley's Kiko fourth, with Alexander Rivera, 3-time race winner over the course of season 1. Could definitely have been a championship contender if his attendance was able to match his speed. He rounds off the top 5. Seth MacFarlane, no, he's not the one from Family Guy. He's in 6th. Peter Vedding in 7th. Andy Yeager, Dan Whitfield and Carson Keane round off the top 10 in the championship standings. Incredibly close, of course, that's to be expected after only one round. But I suppose it's nice to see that the championship winner, the reigning champion, coming into this season, is looking very promising. Now into qualifying, as Darius said, mightily important, but you, as you say, you've got to be so precise around a circuit like Suzuka, Dara.
Yeah, you do. You've got to make sure the car is placed exactly where it needs to be. Exits can be critical. Spoon Corner is one of them. It's a corner where you can take a lot of different lines through, and a lot of drivers do find themselves just going slightly to the left, slightly to the right compared to their competitors. But they're just looking for that best exit on the run down towards 130R, because that is the longest straight, longest flat out part of the track. And critical to find that every single little millisecond you can, especially in these open wheel cars where the times can be so close together. You can see coming through Spoon right here on board as you just exit, the track dips away a little bit, and it can give you that little bit of a boost if you get the car placed exactly where you need it to. And we'll see Yeager come up to 130R, and we'll have to see what his first time is going to be.
Yeah, always good to get a bank lap time in, of course, because it just means that, especially in limited time sessions, like only 10-minute qualifying sessions, you've got something to fall back on. You've got a good time that you can say, okay, if I overstep the mark on run 2 or 3, I've got something good. I've still put in a lap time. I'm still maybe in the mid-pack or whatever. It gives you that security. It gives you that stepping stone to bounce off from. Andy Yeager across the line. This is to start his first flying lap time, and now into probably one of the most fun sequences of corners in motorsport.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll see it here coming through turn 1, and then up through the S's. The corners just keep coming at you as you exit the first corner. We see Yeager is going to come through. The first couple of the S-bends just go left, then right, and the car just flows, and you just hope that the rear end sticks with you, because if it doesn't, you're going to find yourself in a whole world of pain as you rise the hill. Up towards Dunlop is where we see a lot of drivers maybe come a little bit unstuck. The off-cambered nature slightly of the corner can catch a couple of drivers out, but very nicely through there for the end of the first sector. And then the Degners come up, which are a whole lot of fun if you get them spot on.
Oh yeah, indeed. Clip the first apex, and then quite underestimated that second part of the Degners, because you do carry quite a lot of speed, especially in these open wheelers. Of course, this little kink has caught out F1 drivers in the past. Danny Kvyat going flying into the hairpin. Nice bit of camber on the inside. You kind of want to get a late apex-ish, but also make the most of the camber to rotate the car. Quite an easy corner to get drastically wrong, and it's a very fine margin of compromise you have to dwindle with as well. Through, of course, this long right-hander that precedes you into Spoon Curve. Double apexed, of course, downshift a couple of gears, chuck the car in, bring it out to the right-hand side, then come back in once again. You, again, use the track, use the elevation to help the car grip. Be careful of that AstroTurf on the right-hand side. Put your foot down, you rise down, and then back up towards 130R. And, well, in Formula 3 cars, a little bit more of a corner than we see in Formula 1. Does take a degree of commitment to get perfect.
It really does, and it's critical to get it perfect. As we've said at Suzuka, that it is so difficult. But we'll see now Jaeger into the Casio triangle, through the right, then into the left. You've got to try and open up that corner as much as you can before you dive downhill, and try and keep a tighter line as you can to that pit wall to run to the line. Goes a little bit wider than some would if this was his fastest lap, but gets a time on the board, and that'll set him off well for the rest of this session.
It will be indeed. At the moment, it is championship leader David Holland leading the way. A 151.9 is the benchmark. And, well, Daniel Whitfield, very quick driver in his own right. Only second, and, well, I say only second. Second place is great. But just under half a second off David Holland. A sensational time set from the American in the early parts of qualifying. And I suppose when the circuit is this long, I mean 2 minutes in Formula 3 cars is quite a long time. There's more opportunities to make up that lap time, and David Holland has made the most of each and every single one of them. But of course, iRacing, it's got progressive track conditions, so the more cars that go out there, the more laps that get put in, the more rubber gets put down on the circuit as well. So we could well see David Holland or anyone else potentially improving upon that time. But as soon as, basically the problem with these 10-minute qualifying sessions, Dara, I suppose not really a problem, just a fact about 10-minute qualifying sessions, is that as soon as you're into rhythm, as soon as it started, you're basically already onto your final run already. And that's something these drivers are going to have to play into a factor, because you don't have much time to settle into the car.
No, absolutely not, and they're going to have to be right on the pace immediately. With the hour-long practice session they had before this qualifying session, they could take their time a bit more. If they made a mistake, that's fine. There's always a lot of laps, and it's not really under pressure. But when you get into a shortened qualifying session, you've got to get that time incredibly quickly in the car, as we see in the end, a 151.9, just about half a tenth quicker than David Holland, so there's not much in it at the top whatsoever, as David Holland then retakes the fastest lap with a 51.1, which puts him 8 tenths clear, which is a massive margin in these F3 cars.
It is huge margin, especially for a championship of such caliber and of such competitiveness as well. Couple of swap arounds, Andy Jaeger moves his way up into 6th place, which of course is a decent starting position for him, if he can keep it down. Whitfield back up now to 3rd place, just in behind Mackenzie Roon. I mean, if you take David Holland out of the equation, Darragh, it's actually a really competitive field.
Exactly, it really is a competitive field, and there's not much in it at all between quite a lot of these guys, and yeah, about the same gap between David Holland and Mackenzie Roon as there is between Roon, that's actually a little bit less, between Roon and 7th place Kiko. So there's a lot to be said for the drivers a little bit further back in the field, and if they can try and get those few more tenths, they could find themselves a lot higher up than maybe they were expecting. Of course, they're being a massive grid here this evening, so the drivers will be a little bit more spaced out than if there was a, say, 30-40 car grid. So, you know, they've got to find the time, but also they can't expect too much. But when it's close like this, I mean, you see Jaeger and Kiko, there's only 3 thousandths between them. Not much time could put themselves a few more positions up on the grid, and that could be critical in a race like this. 24 laps is quite a long time to make your moves around a track like Suzuka, so getting all those positions is going to be very important indeed.
Indeed, so overtaking should hopefully be in abundance here today, but that all depends on the gap between David Holland and the rest of the field in qualifying, and how he's able to bridge that as the race progresses as well. Mackenzie Roon across the line, it is an improvement. He closes the gap to David Holland, but not quite enough to see him make much of an impact on that run for pole position. Ridgway sat 4th as well, slight improvement for him, which means that, you know, again, very, very close, as Darragh was saying. We've got Vedding, Jaeger and Kiko all within the same tenth of a second, which boasts so much about that midfield fight. Should hopefully be a brilliant battle and display of battling for the race to come. Anthony Zeitz just now across the line. He unfortunately can't quite improve as well, stays 8th into the final moments of qualifying. And the unfortunate thing about iRacing is, Dara, is that as soon as that timer ticks 0, that's it, you're done. Similar to Ratium, I suppose. As soon as that timer ticks 0, you're done. There's no more chance to finish a lap or improve, which again, added element of pressure onto these drivers because they've got to time their runs to absolute perfection if they want to get the most out of this qualifying.
Exactly, and with the time ticking down, I think you've got to be on a lap now if you want to finish it. So some of these guys, if they're just starting or haven't started a lap yet, they're not going to be able to finish. So this is where it comes down to. We see Carson Keane, I think this is coming through 130R now. He's currently not set of a proper lap time yet, so this is going to be his one and only shot as he comes through the Castillo triangle. The Canadian driver knows he needs to get the time in, but he knows it needs to be good enough to be as far up the grid as he can manage. He comes around the final corner, will strike the timing line, and he will put himself
nowhere.
Put him anywhere, actually. I think he stayed where he was, but yeah, that's not ideal for him then if he's not being able to improve, and we'll start right at the back of the grid.
Potentially an invalidation, of course. The way iRacing works is that as soon as you go to the outside of the circuit, that's a 1x, that's your lap done, essentially. And it can be quite harsh sometimes, but then again, everyone's in the same boat. I suppose that's the risk you carry, isn't it, Dara, leaving your run so late?
It is, definitely, and if you've not been able to set that lap time early on, if you've invalidated that banker, then you've got to really be able to be careful. Well, you've got to be careful. You don't have the ability to really chuck the car around the Suzuka circuit, which does require quite a bit of chucking with there being so many high and medium speed corners. But yeah, not ideal for Keane there. All the way down near the back, we see Vedding there. I think he's just improved to P7 he has, which is good for him. Yeah, not many cars left, and I think that will be that for qualifying.
Will be indeed. 10 minutes of struck down to 0. This is the grid. David Holland, Mackenzie Roon share the front row with Dan Whitfield and Robert Ridgway just in behind. Modely's Kiko is able to consolidate the top 5. She'll be joined by Andy Jaeger on row 3. Petter at Vedding, the Norwegian, will be joined by Anthony Zeich on the 4th row of the grid with Kai Kalo and Carson Keane 9th and 10th. Yol Dutton a lonely 6th row of the field in 11th place, and that is the extent of our field here today for round 2 of the Sim Racing for Simpletons Formula 3 Championship here at the Suzuka International Circuit. Of course, it's a fantastic season ahead. Just looking at the calendar, again, Gilles Villeneuve, Brands Hatch, Charlotte Roval, Spa, Watkins Glen and Aragon. Quite a diverse set of circuits to go to, Dara, and a couple of ones that maybe the drivers aren't going to be too familiar with should hopefully throw a spanner into the works.
It's a really interesting looking calendar. A little bit jealous I'm not driving it myself, to be honest. It looks like there's a few really nice tracks to be able to drive and to race at. And yeah, I think some of these guys will be looking forward to some of the tracks like you mentioned, Aragon, new to iRacing. And yeah, those kind of tracks do throw up an interesting race as well. So I think the drivers will surely be looking forward to them. But at the moment, they're going to be focusing right on what's right in front of them. 24 laps of the Suzuka circuit in front of them. And they're going to have to be careful and make their moves where they can.
Yeah, and just quickly, I mean, how as a driver do you prepare yourself when you're sat on the grid? The adrenaline's spiking, the anxiety is spiking. How do you calm your nerves?
I mean, it can be difficult. I mean, everyone will have their own different approaches. Some drivers I know listen to music. I know one driver would actually just, walk around, and when he saw that the lights were going on, he would run back to his wheel, which wouldn't have worked for me. I would have panicked far too much. But I think for some of these guys, just keeping their cool, maybe just a quick check of the phone before the lights come on, and when they do, get ready to go because you can't stress yourself out far too much.
You cannot. The 5 red lights will come on. Round 2 of the Sim Racing for Simpletons here in Japan is underway. A slow start in the background, but equal pegging between the top 2. David Holland, Mackenzie Roon, drag racing towards turn number 1 for the first time. David Holland's got the outside line, inside for Roon. Not quite committed enough. It's carnage in the background. A big off for Robert Ridgway. He's cutting across the grass into the apex. There's contact. Multiple cars off. Zeich, Jaeger, I think, involved as well. Ridgway, again, naturally, it is tumbling down the order after his mistake through turn 1 and 2. So far, so good for the top 4, however. A huge moment in the background and, well, obviously enticed by the flowing nature of that first corner.
Yeah, it can pinch you up a little bit into that apex of turn 1, and it can be difficult to put 2 or even 3 cars alongside. It's very interesting that Carson Keane has very much taken advantage from that. He's up 5 to 5th after starting right near the back of the field, and Dutton as well, up from 11th to 7th, so there's a couple of good movers in the back who avoided all that carnage, but Holland and Roon and Whitfield all holding their own at the start.
Yeah, well, we'll take another look as to how things happen. Ridgeway just getting all out of shape, coming back onto the circuit, taps. I think that might have been Zyke or Jaeger, and then it's just the domino effect. Someone hits someone hits someone else, and then with how sensitive these open wheel Formula 3 cars are, it can so easily go wrong so quickly. And then it was quite a clean start between those at front. Good news is that Mackenzie Roon, thanks to maybe some slipstream and quicker driving, was able to still close the gap. Even had another look at the race lead going into the Degners. David Holland was forced to defend, but still able to stay in front. I suppose that's what Roon needs to be doing, is applying that pressure, forcing Holland to look backwards so that he can't focus his attention forwards.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be important for Roon to do, really, because Holland, of course, should be in a little bit of control at the front of the field with the nature of this track, but Roon's going to have to try and put on as much pressure as he can on the back of him, as well as the fact that people will know that it's easy to make a mistake around a track like Suzuka, and if you can pressure that driver in front to make that tiny error, then you might be able to slip up the inside at a corner like the Casio Triangle. But lots of action on this opening lap. And I think it's going to take a few of them in the mid-pack a couple of laps to calm down and get their races back to where they wanted them to be.
Yeah, and good thing for them is that they have got 24 laps of racing action. They've ticked down one of them, of course. We're still looking in the past. David Holland and Mackenzie Roon have ticked over into the second lap of the day. And Daniel Whitfield is still hot on their heels. Again, the top three not really separated by too much at all. This is them running their way through the final corner. Carson Keane, as you mentioned, able to work his way up 5 places into 5th place, showing that his qualifying pace definitely not reflective of what he can produce when you put him into race trim.
Yeah, and also I think it would have been a little bit beneficial, actually. He might be pleased to have started near the back of the field, because he was just able to avoid all that carnage that really badly affected Anthony Zyke there. So I think he'll be very pleased with how this has gone. You can see him pressuring Wedding as well for 4th place. So he's not going to be disappointed with this start, because he has found his way quite a few places up the grid already in the first lap and a half or so of this race at Suzuka.
Yeah, well, we do have to apologise, ladies and gentlemen. We are having a couple of issues with the replay function in iRacing. We are still looking in the past. What I can say is that David Holland has broken free of that 1 second margin ahead of Mackenzie Roon and is bit by bit trying to spread his wings and get that advantage. Also, this fight here, Carson Keane versus Petter Wedding. They go potentially side by side into the hairpin. Wedding was able to hang on for the time being. The Norwegian driver showing some very strong pace in the opening stages. However, Carson Keane looking ever menacing in his rear view mirror. Carson Keane giving a very, very good fight. As it stands in the present day for these drivers, David Holland and Roon are able to tick over into their next lap and start lap 3 of 24. They're going thick and fast considering it's a long lap here, but Wedding, I think, maybe overdriving the car ever so slightly. Carson Keane definitely looking more perfectly poised.
Yeah, he's just stuck into the slipstream, then down in towards 130R. Will he try and go for it before the flick left? He's going to go for the outside line, feint to the inside, going to the outside. Will he be able to get it all the way around the outside? He's going to go for it, and he does. It's a great move from Carson Keane as he makes his way to the inside. Well, he just can take the racing line into the Casio Triangle. No need to worry about Petter Wedding at all, because he's up into P4 as he will start lap 3, and he is now already up 6 positions in this race, and he's just 1 step off of the podium.
Yeah, he's making his way forward really nicely. 2.5 seconds between Keane and Whitfield. He came to blows on a number of occasions over the course of Season 1 and have definitely given us some memorable moments in the past as well. The Canadian of Keane, of course, 2nd place in last year's championship, narrowly missing out right at the end and taking 2 wins with an average finish of 3rd. Definitely just goes to show his absolute pure skill in the wheel of a Formula 3 car. Of course, the older Formula 3 chassis without the halo and with that massive air intake on the side, trying to maximise as much cool air going into the engine as possible, keeping all the engine components cool as well, because they can get very, very hot very quickly. David Holland still able to lead the way. We are still on lap 3. However, the American race leader is about to tick his way onto lap 4 to complete or start at the 1/6 distance of this 24-lap race. Hopefully, Mackenzie Roon can reel him back in again, because 1.5 seconds at a circuit like Suzuka is definitely going to be a good stepping stone that he can very firmly build upon as the race goes on.
Yeah, definitely, and getting that consistency is key around a track like Suzuka. Of course, it's not a track where you get a lot of tight hairpins and quite stop-start in terms of how the track flows. Suzuka is very flowing, very hitting your marks every single lap, and it's very easy to get into a good rhythm. Well, it's good to get into a comfortable rhythm. It might be difficult to do so, but when you do get into that rhythm, it can be a lot easier to hit those apexes when you need to. But the pace at the front, David Holland going quicker and quicker and quicker. On that third lap, he set that fastest time and took a half a second out of Mackenzie Roon as well. So he really is putting his foot down here. So we see, oh, that's Robert Ridgway going off of the track. I believe that is up the S's there. I think this is Dunlop, but yes, that's not ideal for his race as he is down in P10.
Yeah, not great at all. Not the best of starts, unfortunately. Here is that fight for the lead, by the way. David Holland still in pursuit from the two in behind of Roon and of Whitfield as well. So definitely still stuff to be watching. And the Delta Sport U4K driver has got not a lot of wiggle room to play with. And as you say, one mistake around here can definitely be fatal. So as quick as Holland is, he's got to be careful not to get complacent.
And it's very easy to make that little mistake, as we've said, as David Holland will be aware of that. He's going to have to be looking in his mirrors somewhat, of course, as he runs down towards 130R. That Mackenzie Roon right in his rear view mirror. He comes towards the Casio triangle, but Suzuka, of course, is a track where you've got to be careful with where you make that move. If Roon is going to make is going to make that move, he's going to have to try and find a very particular place to make it. The Casio triangle is most likely to be the favoured spot to make the move, but as he gains towards turn 1, I don't think he'd be against a move at turn 1 if he can find it there. As we see all the drivers snaking their way down this opening straight. Roon is still on the back of the driver in first place, which is David Holland. But he's going to have to try to find his way past as we start. I believe this is now lap 5 of this 24-lap race.
Indeed is. Very much getting through it quite quickly. And you can see there David Holland able to build the gap back to Mackenzie Roon. The closest battle at the moment is between Modelese Kiko and Petter Wedding for 5th. Which again should hopefully be a very exciting battle indeed. The thing with Suzuka is that it is quite hard to follow through the S's and the high commitment corners. You put a lot of trust in the driver in front to not spin essentially. A slow exit through the Degner from Wedding could see Kiko maybe have a bit of a look. It'll be the inside for the Kink, the outside for the hairpin contact. They come to blows, both are off. Spinning backwards is the Norwegian. Modelese Kiko is dragged into the gravel as well. And that was an accident waiting to happen, I think. It was Kalau just running his way underneath the pair of them as well into 5th. But, wow, that could have been avoided.
Yeah, it could have. It was difficult to see. We'll see. I think we'll see it better from this angle as they come towards their hairpin. Yeah, Wedding comes across a bit, but Kiko just drifts a little, but I can't really see too much in that. And then once that initial contact was made, Wedding wasn't really very much in control of the car, so I don't really see was that much that could have been done there. There wasn't very much in the contact at all, but they're going to re-engage battle down towards 130R.
Yeah, it's round 2. Gloves are off. Kiko has the inside for 130R and gets ahead. I think Wedding either apologising for the incident or not wanting to go side by side through 130R. Definitely one of the two. I'd have to put that down to a racing incident, to be honest. It might have been netcode. We couldn't quite see the intricacies of it on the inside, obviously, with the iRacing contact model. When two cars go side by side, the contact model says, all right, I'm going to make some predictions. Where are the cars going? And if it predicts they're going to make contact, it will show contact, even if visually they haven't had any contact. So that might have been the case. Who knows? But it did look very close. And Kiko could have maybe pinched herself more to the right-hand side. Wedding maybe couldn't have pinched her so much on the inside himself. But hey-ho, it's happened now. And Kalau has definitely not been worried about that at all. He's up to 5th place with Andy Jaeger pinning his way down into the pit lane. That probably isn't a scheduled stop, albeit actually no, a very short one, so maybe not even for damage. But one thing that is for certain is David Holland. And he, as soon as he got out of the slipstream of Mackenzie Roon, has just been able to build that gap lap by lap.
And he is really putting his foot down. 2.5 seconds the gap at the moment, and it's about the same back between Roon and Whitfield as well. Keane as well. Carson Keane is doing very well. You can see on the timing tower he is very close to the back of Whitfield, less than a second between the Englishman and the Canadian, but there's a much bigger gap down to 5th and Caio. So Ford definitely getting away from the rest at this stage. We did see Jaeger in the pit lane. We will wait to see how that fits into his race, but it means he is a long way behind Dutton in P8. So the gap's starting to form, but then there's still a little bit of intrigue, especially for 3rd and 4th. Keane starting in 10th, he's worked his way up to 4th, and he looks like he might be hungry for some more positions early on in this race.
He's a racing driver, of course he is. He's going to want more if he can get more. Look at him, the Valley Motorsports driver, looking keen as ever to work his way onto the podium. It's a new season and the puns stay the same. Honestly, Dara, he didn't have a round without it. He's now hunting down Dan Whitfield for 3rd place, who is very soon going to have to look in his mirrors. And that's the thing, the visor tear-offs as well. With these open-wheel cars, you do get all of the spray kicked up onto your visor, which means that visibility can very quickly be dwindled down if you don't have a visor tear-off button. I remember when I used to do iRacing in the Formula 4 car, press every 5 seconds just to maximise the visibility, because at a circuit like Suzuka, a lot of dust does get kicked up, and we see it in real life actually with Daniel Ricciardo, sometimes intentionally doing it to put the other driver off.
I think it was Oscar, I think, wasn't it, a few years ago, that he, out of the final corner, kicked up a little bit of dust. But yeah, we'll have to see if Whitfield might try a couple of those tactics. Well, he won't be able to, because he's gone straight on at the second deg now. He's able to keep it on track, but Keane has just said thank you very much indeed, and just slides up the inside. I think Keane's only actually made one proper overtake so far in this race. The rest have been handed to him on a plate, but he is not complaining in the slightest, because he is now only about just under 7 seconds off of the lead of this race in David Holland, and the pace he is showing suggests that he is after that lead, and with a long way to go. We're only just over a quarter of the way through this 24-lap race, and Suzuka will definitely be trying for the lead, so we see that lock-up unfold again.
It was close. It was close. I mean, Keane nearly sort of tagged Whitfield on the exit. I think Whitfield too concentrated on what's going on behind him. And the way the Degner works is that you're going through the right-hander. You're putting quite a lot of steering angle in to get the car rotated. And then almost immediately you're on the brakes for the second Degner. You're having to balance the car on your left and right foot quite delicately. So much so that one slight miscalculation on how much brake pressure you put in as you're trying to turn for the corner itself can very easily lock the car up. The front right locked up. Whitfield was a passenger, went forward. Very well done. The best thing you can do in that situation is to actually come off the brakes, because as soon as the brakes are locked, you have no turning. But if you can just come off them, yes, you're going to carry too much speed going in, but at least you're going to have some control of the car. And he did a great job of actually keeping it on the circuit, because a lot of drivers in that situation find it so easy just to panic and just say nope, and then very quickly they're in the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I for one thought he was going to just fly straight into that gravel trap on the exit of Degner 2, but he did incredibly well to keep it on the black stuff, which is exactly where he needed to be to try and regain that bit of momentum up towards the hairpin. He's not fallen too far behind Keane at all. He's still within that second of the Canadian driver in front. See if he makes the same mistake again. No, he doesn't. Much tighter line, much nicer flow through Degner 2 for Whitfield, but he's now in 4th. He's got to find a couple of positions. Ooh, that's Dutton, I think he's coming out of the pit lane indeed through turn 1. He's going to slip back to 9th place and slot in between Jaeger and Ridgway in P9, but you can see I think that was Zyka a lap down just behind as well. So a lot of intrigue again still. I mean, with that mistake from Whitfield, it does open the door to the idea that these drivers might make the mistake once or twice again. So we might have to be a little bit wary of if they do so. David Holland will hope it doesn't happen to him, though. He can have a nice quiet lap, 16 laps, 17 laps to the end from him.
Yeah, well, we're about a third of the way through the race already. Very nice livery on the Formula 3 car of David Holland, and well, very nice pace I think is more important. Look at that, the comparison, taken a few tenths here and there over the course of the lap times, and well, nice and consistent as well for good measure. Look at that, he's matched 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7 were only a tenth apart, 7 and 8 were less than a tenth apart as well. Incredible consistency, because that's the pairing you have to have. You've got to be quick, but you've got to be quick lap after lap, and David Holland at the moment has perfected both.
Yeah, he has, and that consistency is critical. I mean, Rune is being left in the dust. That was a gapping at around 5-6 tenths per lap, which wasn't going to be helpful for Rune's challenge whatsoever, as he will have to continue to just work away, try and find the lines that will get him closer to David Holland, because that is all he can do at this stage of the race. There is still, of course, about 15 and a half laps to go, so a lot of time for him to find that consistency, to find that drive, and yeah, I think it'll be important for Rune to just stay calm. He knows that there's a lot of time left. Just try and hit those marks. If he becomes panicked, of course, may find himself losing time by making a couple of mistakes and then falling in back towards Keane. So if you just keep it calm, just try and keep it consistent. If he gets second, he gets second. But that is better than pushing hard, making that mistake, and going third, fourth.
Yeah, well, again, it's that tightrope that you have to walk, and again, that risk versus reward factor. I think for Holland, he's got a good gap behind, and well, it's better off just him chilling, essentially. I'd say don't drive, at 100% of the limit. But saying that, actually, talking to a couple of drivers about that, sort of how hard do you push when you don't need to push? Some of them say at the limit, because sometimes consciously having to slow yourself down puts you in a position where you're actually more likely to make those mistakes.
Yeah, it can be a bit, you can get into that feeling of a bit lax. You're not trying to push too hard, because you might be thinking about what you're going to have to eat after the race, as we see Kayo, who's now more focused on trying to get past Vedding here, the Casio triangle, but I don't think he'll be able to make it. Yeah, if you zone out a little bit too much, you will find yourself, maybe making that mistake that you weren't expecting. You just weren't thinking in the same way that you were at the start of the race, when you were more intensely focusing on the track ahead of you, and that can come back to bite you. So it can be difficult to keep that concentration when it gets a little bit dull on your own, not really gaining to the car in front, and the car behind isn't really gaining on you either, so you're in a bit of a no man's land situation. Yeah, I think for some of these guys, they know, they've experienced it before, they know exactly how to keep themselves in the zone. Will try and continue to hit all of their markers, because they know that if they can get the best result that they can in this race. For people like Kayo at the moment, and for Vedding, they're going to be more concentrating on looking in their mirrors and looking at the lines for the car in front to try and find their way past.
Yeah, you've got to analyse your opponent and see where and when you can maybe go for an overtake, where you're quicker, where they're quicker. Factor that into how you make a move, because at the moment for Vedding, all he's got to do essentially is be quicker off of the slow speed stuff that precedes a longer straight. Because if he's quick there, Calo doesn't really have much of an answer for him, because yes, the slipstream's strong, but if Vedding can build that gap before the straight, then there's not really much that slipstream can do to help. But if Calo can maintain a close gap, say off the exit spoon or going through 130R into the Casio triangle, he can very easily pick up the pieces, find a move potentially. But that's the problem with Suzuka, that a lot of these corners are very single file orientated, very hard to go side by side, not a lot of heavy braking zones, especially when you get into fast cars like these open wheel Formula 3 cars. I suppose the good thing is that the slipstream up towards 130R is so strong. Look at the speed from Kalau. Defensive maneuver going from Vedding through, not quite able to get the under and over is Kalau, but again, just that problem is that there's not a massive hairpin at the end of a massive straight. It's very wiggly, it's very twisty, and a lot of it you can't really go for a move. However, Kalau's not even going to have to make one now, because the Norwegian comes into the pit lane.
Yeah, and this is going to be a part of the race that he's going to have to try and really focus, because he knows that he's going to have to pit at some stage in this race, and if he can try and work his way past with a large overcut on Vedding, then he won't actually have to make the move on track, which can be absolutely critical. I mean, you just mentioned how difficult it can be. I mean, this isn't a Herman Tilke track where you've got a long straight and then a large braking zone and then another long straight and then another large braking zone. This track is one of the classics. It's raw. It is very much a racer's track. Not necessarily designed for racing, but designed to drive a car incredibly fast around, with racing second on the mind. So these drivers are going to have to try and work out where the racing comes first. A track like this, of course, Vedding with that pit stop will be still in a fight with Kayo, but he won't be on the same part of the racetrack, and Kayo will know that if he can get a large enough overcut, if he has that pace, that he can try and basically get his way past the Norwegian without trying to overtake him physically on the track, which can be so difficult, as we've mentioned.
Yeah, so do it in the pit lane as much as you can. A bit of a mistake there from David Holland, of course, as low as these Formula 3 cars can run to maximise the airflow under the car. Not quite as complex floor designs as maybe Formula 1 car, maybe getting close to Williams potentially, who knows. But yeah, they rely quite a lot on the car being close to the floor, maximise the low pressure air underneath, and as soon as you go over a curb, you Tony Hawk style it, all four wheels lift off the ground, which one thing is a bad thing because you don't have any actual rubber contact with the road, but also you destabilize the car because you get a rush of air going under the car, which is not great for the aerodynamic suck that is at play underneath the floor through the diffuser and things, but he's been able to hang on to it for now and setting some good pace, of course. His best lap time of 1:51.2, his last lap time still in the 51.7, so once again just proving his sheer consistency is paying dividends for him. This is Dan Whitfield at the moment trying to chase down Carson Keane, but a 2.5 second gap up to the Canadian. But if you can sort of, as you say, make the most of your in-lap and out-lap, yes, you're not really, I suppose, fueling up for very long or putting any tyres on or anything like that. But if you can brake as late as you can into the pit lane, disengage the limiter as early as you can, also stop in your pit box as well as effectively as you can, because it's so easy, isn't it, Dara, to overshoot the mark, think, oh brilliant, neutral, reverse back to neutral, jack up and then fuel the car. You can lose a crucial few seconds if you get it wrong.
Exactly, and if we look at David Holland, I mean, even if he loses 6 seconds in that pit stop, he's going to find himself behind Mackenzie Roon. And if he finds himself behind there, even though he's got that pace, he's been pulling out that gap for 5, 6, 7 tenths per lap, he may have to make that move on track, which is very difficult indeed. We've seen many races at Suzuka in all forms of categories where the leader doesn't have the pace of the driver in second, but can just use the track and its characteristics to their advantage. And Holland will just hoping to think about that. He'll be hoping to have a nice clean pit stop, not have to think about it, get in, get out, nice and clean, and still maintain that 6, maybe even more second gap to Mackenzie Roon. And then Keane as well. I mean, Keane, as Holland has been gaining the time off Roon, he's not been he's been gaining the same amount of time to Keane, which has meant that he's kept that same, relatively the same gap to Roon, and he has gained a 10th as the Canadian driver in third on Roon. So that is still a battle that we're going to have to keep an eye on until the end of this race, because there is always that possibility of that unfolding of drivers finding their way through for making that move right at the end if they just about have enough pace. But long way to go. We've just passed half distance, so there's still a long way to go and a lot of time to make sure you're concentrating.
Yeah, indeed. So you've got to stay focused, because especially at a driver circuit like Suzuka, that is half of the battle. A little bit wide from Calo and Model East Kiko. Again, maybe line following a little bit. Tunnel vision potentially a bit of a factor in that. She's trying to close the gap and therefore has a bit of target fixation on the driver in front. And again, that can sort of warp your thought process going into corners. You see what they do and naturally your brain is going to copy them. So Kiko has to be careful not to fall victim to maybe some of the same mistakes that Calo is facing and try not to replicate them herself, but doing a great job at chipping away at the gap, and it's an exponential increase in speed. The closer you get, the better the slipstream works. The better the slipstream works, the closer you get. So bit by bit she will chip away at the gap, and visually over the course of the first half of this lap, Dara, she's really closed the gap.
She looks like she's really on it at the moment, trying to get past Kaio, who of course is in that little battle with Vedding, but of course Kiko had that battle with Vedding that ended up with both of them in the gravel towards the hairpin. She's going to go to the outside line into Spoon. I think Kaio's just going to let her pass. Yes, he does, and so there we go. Kiko straight up into P5 through Spoon. Didn't need to do too much to make that overtake. But she won't complain. Kaio looks like he's struggling a bit. Maybe the tyres sliding across the surface of the track just a little bit. Yeah, Kiko up to P5 now, and that is great progress after that moment and contact with heading down in towards the hairpin.
Indeed so, and that's how she managed to do it into Spoon corner. Great sportsmanship from Guy Kio, because, again, not really in the same battle. The way that Kiko was able to close the gap that quickly, it would only have been harming both races if the Benelux driver basically put up a fight, because eventually Kiko probably would have found a way through, and then by that point they'd have both lost 3, 4, 5 seconds to the drivers around them. And when you're in a direct fight with the Norwegian Petter Vedding, that is the last thing you want. Checking in, by the way, David Holland is still here. He is still growing the gap. It's closing in onto 8 seconds clear of the reigning champion of Mackenzie Roon. So David Holland, 6.1 KI rating, which is firmly above average, definitely a lot better than me, and is looking incredibly quick as well. And well, after his win a week ago in Zolder, is looking to extend the championship points lead. Of course, he can't get too complacent though, because we've still got a long way to go in this season, still a long way to go in this race. I'm sure his confidence is going to be sky high, but again, you cannot let anything feel secure in motorsport.
Oh, definitely, and yeah, that 6.1k rating is definitely a lot higher than mine. There's a reason I am sitting here talking rather than driving. But yeah, it's very important to grind out the results that you can, and even when there's not too much to do in races like this, they can all add up and work towards the overall goal. I mean, I'm just timing screens here. It's always Haroon, I believe, has come into the pit lane. There he is. He's going to come in for his quick stop. The American, Keen will see that. I think he'll put his foot down, try and gain that little bit of time when that gap isn't so clear. Ooh, a little bit glide into the pit box, but he's up on the jacks. He'll be out soon enough. But we'll have to see where Roon comes out, whether he comes out ahead of Kiko. I think he will, because it's he definitely will. It's a massive gap between Whitfield and Kiko in 3rd and 5th. So yeah, a nice little gap for Roon to slot into there. And I noticed that his fastest lap in this race, Mackenzie Roon, is slower than David Holland's last, which shows how consistently fast he's been over the course of the first 14.5 laps of this race.
Yeah, he's kept it up to quite a sensational standard. I mean, that was clear by him taking pole by 6.5 tenths of a second, which, yes, is impressive. And you might be saying, well, that's 1 lap. What about 24 in the race? Well, we're 15 in, and David Holland has not flinched one bit. I mean, no, it wasn't Carson Keane. It was Mackenzie Roon in the early stages, giving him a good battle for the majority of the early part of this race. And then as soon as Holland was able to get out the slipstream, he basically was just like, nah, mate, in a bit, see you later, and has now run his way to a very, very dominant lead so far. Again, still quite a long way to go. He could make a mistake in the next corner, and Carson Keane could come through to win the race. That is definitely still a possibility. So Holland has to, again, stay focused, keep his awareness about him. There is his virtual driver. That isn't David Holland. He's sat somewhere at home, probably in the USA, chilling on his sim rig. And now actually finds his way into the pit lane, cruising down, and will probably very comfortably be able to come back into the race lead. Probably not into the race lead literally, but definitely net, because Carson Keane, who himself, by the way, is having a very impressive race, finds himself now passed. Still waiting for him to come into the pit lane. Same too with Daniel Whitfield. He's still leaving it quite late, but I suppose when it's just a splash and dash, it doesn't really matter all that too much.
Yeah, and especially when there isn't really anybody in the pit window where you're trying to fight to maybe gain that position. It isn't too dependent on when you come into the pit lane, because of course those gaps are relatively large now. But Keane will be very pleased to be leading this race after starting in the penultimate grid slot in 10th for this race. So he'll be very pleased to lead for however long he will before he comes into the pit lane, comes through taking the 2 underneath the bridge where the straight goes over, and he will come up towards the hairpin. But yeah, he's been incredibly consistent as well this evening, and we've seen those drivers who have been consistent work their way through. No mistakes for him, no mistakes for Holland or Roon, and they are realistically the net top 3 here. Even though Whitfield is in 2nd, he should come out behind Mackenzie Roon after they make the pit stop. Yeah, I mean, those top 4 are a long way ahead of Model East Kiko, who is in 5th, where she started, the only driver to currently be in the position that they started in. And so, yeah, everyone moving up and down, but Model East Kiko just having a nice consistent race, staying in 5th, but still the top half of the order.
Yeah, again, very good stuff from Modelise Kiko. Always been one of those drivers that are mightily consistent. No matter what strength of field you put her in, managed to snag a couple of podiums as well over the course of last season. Again, she's in 5th place right now. Her average finish over the course of last season was 5th place, and at the moment she's 4th in the championship. So again, always around that 4th, 5th margin, which might not win you any championships when you've got drivers like David Holland on the field, but it will definitely get you up there. And that is probably one of the most useful skills as a racing driver that you can have, is being able to get the most out of every week you get into the car. Because it's all good going from 1st and then DNFing one race, then back up to 3rd, then DNFing the next race. If you can hold that steady 4th, 5th area, you're going to be riding through the season, and you never know, you are right on that margin for if anything goes on in front of you, you're then the one to pick up the pieces.
Exactly, and it's always important to just place yourself in those positions where you can pick up the pieces. That can be all important in the race. I mean, Keane, I think if he was looking at a lap that would have put him maybe 5th, 6th, 7th qualifying with that lap at the end of the session, I think he would be pleased in hindsight that he didn't get the lap in, because he was able to miss all of the carnage in turn 1 and just slip through the middle and up into a position where he could build a race from. As we now see Kaio into the pit lane, of course he was in a bit of a battle with Fedding, but he's come out a long way. In front has the Norwegian driver. Kaio nowhere to be seen in terms of his battle with the Norwegian, so that hasn't worked out for him very well. And he's got a little bit of work to do, as we see Ridgway just come past Dutton into turn 1. Dutton didn't look like he fought that too hard. Got a little battle on the 3-car train. Kaio, Ridgway and Dutton, 8th, 9th and 10th at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic battle towards the tail end of the order. So hopefully for Yoel Dutton, he can be roped back into it, because he is about a second off the back of the two of Kaio and Ridgway. But you never know what could go on. A couple of swaps of the places as well. Very close battling. Dutton has dragged himself back into that 1 second margin. No, these Formula 3 cars do not have DRS. However, that is roughly where the slipstream starts to play a factor, where you start to feel the effects of it. So while no, you don't open a flap in the rear wing, you do still gain a ton of time on the straights, because of the hole in the air the driver in front is punching for you. You can then sit behind, basically grab your friend the next time it's a windy day and walk behind them. You will have a much easier time than they will, and that's exactly what slipstream is. You're being more efficient with the engine, and you can get more out of the engine for the same amount of input that the driver in front does. Therefore, you're going to gain a good 5, 10, 15, sometimes mile an hour relative to your competitors, and that could very well easily help that battle between Kaio and Dutton. Ridgway able to grow the gap to about 2.2 seconds, however, so settling himself into a bit of a no man's land, which, to be fair, the majority of the grid are now just driving by themselves.
Yeah, they are. They just, as you mentioned, they're just having to keep it consistent as Holland gets a little bit wide. Degner too. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a windy day. It's much harder, especially when you are smaller, to not fall over. And if you've got a big, tall friend, that helps absolutely endlessly.
Which is all of your friends, Darren.
Yes, thank you. I'm not speaking from experience at all when I say that it's difficult to walk on a windy day. But Dutton, he won't be thinking about that. He'll be thinking about Kaio just in front of him. The Benelux driver followed by the driver from Luxembourg. So these two, maybe from the same country. I suspect that Kaio is more likely to be from Luxembourg than he is from the Netherlands, judging by his last name, but I'm not going to make any presumptions at all. But these two, 9th and 10th at the moment, they're going to be fighting out if they can. There's not that much in terms of points to fight for compared to if they were fighting up the front, but every point counts in a championship like this, and they'll be much happier if they come away with pushing ahead of their competitor rather than if they just slip behind in the final stages. But Whitfield now into the pit lane. He's one of the last to do so.
Yeah, he's the final driver to owe us a pit stop. He comes in, drops behind David Holland, understandably so. I think his main fight is with Mackenzie Roon, but I think it will be Whitfield who falls behind the American in the end of it. And, well, talking about Luxembourg, right? What is someone from Luxembourg called? Is it a Luxembourger? A person from Luxembourg? I've always had this thought, because there's one driver, Guillaume Hamling, on ACC, and I've never known what to call him. What is it? What Luxembourger? Luxembourgish?
I thought it was Luxembourg. I thought it was Luxembourgish, but it could be Luxembourger. one of those ones that I don't think many people know really, because it's, because Luxembourg is quite a small country. Many people. Oh yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna look that up immediately when this stream ends. That has now piqued my interest. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Luxembourger. Like he's a Luxembourger.
Yeah,
Or
that'll do.
He's Luxembourgish. I might be both. I don't know.
Google will know. Google will know.
Google will know. And if Google
Hopefully.
doesn't know, then I'm just gonna have to ask Dutton kind of themselves if they know. But Keane's not going to care. He's, quite frankly, in a world of his own. He's got, that is 13 seconds to David Holland behind him and 23.8 to Mackenzie Roon behind him, and is still yet to pit. And there's not many laps to go, so it might be a bit like a Rallycross Joker lap that he takes on the final lap. Everyone loves a bit of Rallycross. Might be a fan and might be taking some tips that he's brought from there over to the Sim Racing Simpletons F3 race, but he's currently in P1. But David Holland knows that he is currently in a big lead here in the net race lead.
Yeah, Carson Keane, the Canadianer, out in front. David Holland trying to close him in. We have got Brian in the YouTube chat, by the way, on JP Broadcasting to say it is Luxembourger. Maybe Luxembourger, just to make it sound less like he's a Mackey's menu item, potentially. And yeah, he's also come out and said that he hopes David Holland can inspire some learning and progress for some of these drivers. Basically telling everyone else on the field of the league that he runs to get good. I respect it. I saw right through the facade of maybe he can start up a training and they can all rise up to his level. Nah, he's basically told every single one of these drivers that isn't David Holland to get good, and then went to speak to the praises of David Holland to say he is just at that pinnacle of speed that is so hard to get to. Consistency and speed, and he is right in saying usually it is one or the other. Sometimes a driver's really quick but suffers on consistency. Sometimes a driver's really consistent but isn't quick consistently. It's a golden mean, and right now David Holland is taking top prize.
And you see it a lot in different forms and different forms on the game. Some drivers prefer to do those one lap pace, try and nail that one lap pace. Other drivers just like to do 20, 30 laps, and it's rare that you get drivers that can do both at such a high level. On the bottom right of your screen there, you see the pit stop strategy. Keane all the way through the race on the same strategy, but not anymore. He's finally into the pit lane on lap 21 of 24. It's taken a while. He's finally bitten the bullet. Is that he's bitten the bullet? I think,
yes.
And he's coming to the pit lane. Yeah. You said bought the bullet, but that is definitely not correct.
No, it's you bite the bullet, I think. I don't know. Honestly, the amount of phrases I've gone to say in commentary and gotten them drastically wrong, probably quite embarrassing. But we've all been there. But it's always a struggle, especially when we're British, because we're just stupid like that. Anyway, we won't dig ourselves a hole any deeper. Carson Keane then re-emerges in second place, only 1.6 seconds clear of Mackenzie Roon. The pace between the two of them has been mightily close, but I suppose the clear air for Carson Keane out in front has allowed him to retain that second place. He's been on an absolute charge, but what can Mackenzie Roon do in the final few laps?
I think Keane will be very pleased indeed, because as we could see that pace just before Roon made his stop, Keane was gaining ever so slightly lap by lap, and Keane is able to do that overcut over so many laps. And yeah, he's in second. He'll be very pleased with that, and he can try and go after Holland. I think it's been a little bit too late for that.
Yeah, indeed so. And well, again, time definitely isn't on his side on lap 21 of 24. He's not got a ton of opportunities, not only to close the gap, but to then get past, and then by extension then to keep the poor position. He's been trying to close the gap as much as he can over the course of that net period when they were chasing each other on lap time, when it was essentially a time trial. Fortunately for them, they've not really got much of a problem in front or behind, so they can firmly focus on each other. There you can see how quick David Holland is essentially, and it's a lot quicker than the rest of the field, unfortunately. Keane, however, has put in some impressive lap times, has chipped the gap ever so slightly, a little bit back to David Holland. Now so much that it's only at 6.5 seconds, but still not quite enough in order to see him challenging for the race lead. Mackenzie Roon, as it stands, still closing the gap, now teetering on the edge of 1 second. As soon as he gets underneath it, it will firmly help him, because he'll basically just cast a hook, latch onto the rear wing of Carson Keane, and bit by bit maybe start to reel him in. There it is, back under a second. It's flirting with it. It doesn't want to, doesn't want to, does want to, doesn't want to. Mackenzie Roon does look a little bit quicker, but again, they're so evenly matched that there's not really much that either of them can do, apart from hope for a mistake.
Definitely, and I think Carson Keane will be the one flowing with confidence at the moment. Of course, he came from 10th, he's up to 2nd. 8 positions gained in an 11-car field. He's just 2 off the maximum. If you come from 11th through to 1st, so he's going to be one brimming with confidence. He's had the express pace all the way through this race, and he's going to try and pull that gap. It's coming out a little bit, just about 1.3 now between Keane and Roon. And Roon will be, I think he'll be a little bit disappointed after being so long in the net race P2, just to see Carson Keane come out in front of him from the pit lane. Won't have been a happy sight for him. He knows that if he can just keep it balanced, he does have P3 quite very well in the bag, but he will be annoyed that he has lost that P2 to Carson Keane. Maybe we'll feel that if he didn't get a little bit complacent while he was out driving on his own with no one around him, he may have gained those couple of tenths per lap to keep him ahead. But as it is, he's going to have to try and find his way past in the last 2 laps here in Suzuka.
Yeah, which fortunately for him is a relatively long time. We've got about 4 minutes of racing action left to go, and David Holland is going to be again trying to just chill with that race lead. I mean, Carson Keane has taken a second out of him on this last lap alone. Hopefully for Holland, he hasn't underfueled the car. That would be drastic and would be a very interesting spice to the end of this race. I think maybe he is just lifting off ever so slightly, trying to bring it home. But Keane, incredibly quick on that last lap, and is closing the gap at 51.4, which still is 0.7 of a second off David Holland's best, but was 2 seconds quicker than David Holland on that last lap. What is going on? Must have been a mistake or something potentially. Didn't see anything flag up on the live timing, but I don't know what would cause him to drive this slow this late.
It must have been a slight mistake. He's been out in front for so long, he might have just got a little bit complacent just in the closing stages here. But yeah, I can't think of anything else really. I can't see him dropping that pace consistently to Carson Keane, but that gap does look like it's coming down. 4 seconds just about is the gap. If Holland makes a couple more mistakes, we might be having a conversation between David Holland and Carson Keane for the win, and I don't think anyone would have been predicting that at the start of this 24-lap race at Suzuka. Carson Keane is on the back of David Holland. His mind he will be, because he's going to be trying to push that gap, and he is gaining. That time is coming down, yeah. 3.6. I mean, I think it's a couple of laps too late, but maybe there is a conversation to be had for the win here.
There's a hope. We're not saying it's going to happen. We're just saying there's a hope. 3.2 seconds between the two of them. If this gap continues to close, maybe we could see Carson Keane have a late dash for the lead, unless David Holland sort of sorts out what's been going on and is able to maybe maintain the gap. The problem is that Carson Keane, as you say, too little too late potentially this late on in the race, because again, he's only got 1 and a bit laps left to go. 1 lap and 3 corners left of this race. David Holland just needs to crawl the car home essentially and hope that Carson Keane doesn't get close enough to go for a strike, because if it is a lack of fuel, if he is being forced to lift and coast, that is definitely going to be a huge problem. Could be the tyres going off, maybe pushed too hard. He starts the final lap of this race, however, 3 seconds is the gap. I don't know. I still think David Holland's got this. I just think he's going to be a little bit more worried than he was 3 laps ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, white flag, of course, flying out in Suzuka, but I don't know. Holland he's just lost time. It did look like he lost a lot of time through that Casio triangle. Lost about 5-6 tenths on Ness, so it might be fuel related, but not too sure. I mean, he's still got that cushion of 3 seconds to defend on, but I didn't expect us to be having this conversation, if I'm completely honest, on the final lap. I thought David Holland would have this wrapped up, gone to get a cup of tea, come back, still be leading this race by a good 30-40 seconds. But Carson Keane is on the back of him, and he is trying to find his way past. Even Mackenzie Roon is closing. I mean, that gap, remember, before the pit stop was about 7-8 seconds. It's now down to under 6, so something has happened to the pace of David Holland, but he's pulled out that gap on the final lap. I don't know if maybe he was just toying with all of us. Maybe he was a little bit bored, thought he might give us a
Playing
bit
with
of
his
a...
food, yeah.
Yeah, giving us something to talk about. Maybe his cat was jumping on him and he's just become a little bit unfocused, but he looks very comfortable. I think he should be able to hold on to this one with only up 3-4 corners to go.
Yeah, that's a good thing about building yourself that gap early on, is because that now, when things do go wrong for you, you have that cushion to fall back on. And now he's only got the Casio triangle and the final corner left to go. If he loses this race lead now, it'll be a miracle for Carson Keane. David Holland, the championship leader, won the first time out at Circuit Zolder. He's going to do it again here in Suzuka. The sim racer for Simpletons Formula 3 Championship. Round number 2 goes the way of David Holland. A dominant performance from lights to flag. Carson Keane and Mackenzie Roon the podium, with Daniel Whitfield, Modley's Kiko 4th and 5th, a long way behind the race lead though, and understandably so. David Holland has been levelled above everyone else, head and shoulders in terms of pace, and will be very deservedly so, extending his championship lead above the rest. Here is Modley's Kiko to cross the line in P5. Darragh, it must be said, a very tame race, fundamentally. I mean, everyone was a little bit spaced out, not a lot of action apart from that first lap. But these are sort of the races that the drivers earn their money, essentially. These are the races where your skill is truly tested, because to stay focused while driving for yourself for that long and to still maintain a good degree of pace, like the David Hollands, the Carson Keens, right at the front, but still by themselves, not easy.
Oh, exactly. And I think it pays to see how much qualifying hurt Carson Keane as well. I mean, if he qualified closer to the front of the grid, I think there was definitely a conversation that he would be in for the fight or the win, but he's come second, and I think he'll be pleased after starting 10th. But these guys now coming across the line, they didn't quite have the pace of the top 4, but Kiko, incredible job, but very lonely at the end. 17 seconds behind Whitfield, 13 ahead of Jaeger. So, not the most fun time for Kiko in 5th, but it's 5th all the same, and all those points do add up, as you said. And in the championship of an 8-round championship, all those points do count for quite a lot. And David Holland has got quite a few of them already, and he'll be looking to extend that gap as we go through the rest of the season before we end at Aragon.
Yeah, indeed. So, again, as you say, very good point to bring up the fact that we've only got 8 rounds. Each race accounts for 12.5% of the total points haul, which is a lot of a percent, which means that you need to maximise each and every week that you come out to track. However, for round 2 for this week, David Holland was able to do the same thing and replicate his success from a week ago. Carson Keane, Mackenzie Roon join him on the podium, with Daniel Whitfield and Kiko once again in her brilliance of consistency. It rounds out the top 5. Andy Jaeger, Petter Vedding, P6 and 7. Robert Ridgway and Guy Calo, 8th and 9th. Yoel Dutton, Anthony Zyke round off the 11 car field that we had here today for 24 laps of racing action. We've got a couple of drivers waiting in the interview room, so we'll drag in first and foremost Modley's Kiko. Welcome in, of course. It's been quite a long time since I've spoken to you, all the way back since last season, because obviously I wasn't here last week. But welcome in once again. A very good drive, consistent once again up into 5th.
Yeah, it was a bit of a lucky start. It's becoming a bit of a trend of mine with that sort of lap 1 incident. And then, I don't even know what lap it was, lap 3 or 4 with another incident. But I think, looking at the results, if I was going to guess, I would say P5 was a target. So I got what I came for. And I found pace that I didn't know I had yesterday. So, a win all round as far as I'm concerned. And apologies if I actually caused any of those. I'm just looking through them now, see what happened.
I think you were all right. I think the one with who was it right at the start of the race? It was a little bit touch and go, but I think in the end a racing incident. Very good race nonetheless. In a week's time, however, we go to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. You feeling confident for Canada?
Oh yeah, I love it. I was not looking forward to Suzuka, so I'm glad it's behind us. Yeah, and I'm not necessarily fast at CGV, but I do enjoy driving there. So hopefully I won't be in a big bubble. I'll find someone to race with and have a good time.
Fingers crossed. Well, best of luck to you. Before we let you go, Mod, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
How about you guys? Always fun to watch you guys back. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well. That's nice. I feel very appreciated. Take care, Mod, and hopefully we'll see you back in a week's time.
Take care.
Bye bye. Next up, we will take a look. Actually, we got quite a few choices. We'll go for Petter Vedding. Hello, welcome in. Of course, nice to meet you. It's the first time we spoke. A decent race there, managing to get yourself into 7th. Must have been quite a tough race though, quite lonely for the majority of it here at Suzuka.
Yeah, it really was. Just like the first race, there was an explosive start with cars and parts flying everywhere. Got out of that, and then I don't know what happened between me and Mod. Probably just a racing incident. Stuff happens. It's a really tight hairpin. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I didn't leave enough space. I don't know what happened, but if I didn't leave enough space, I'm sorry about that. But luckily, we have that one shot at quick repairs. So we got on with it. Yeah, sure. I was thinking I would do tiny a bit better. I like Suzuka, but yeah, well, here we are. Points are points.
Points are points at the end of the day. They do all add up. But how about next week? The Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. How are you feeling about the semi-permanent street in Canada?
I'm feeling that I don't know the track very well, and I have a lot of practice to do this week.
Cool. Well, enjoy it. Have fun with it. And hopefully next week, maybe we'll see you breaching into the top 5. Petter, before we let you go, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my dad watching, because I'm sure it's kind of fun watching me race. So yeah, that's really that. Yeah, I'm so sweaty. I got to take a shower. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night. Enjoy your shower. Very nice.
Thanks. Bye.
Enjoy. See you later. Take care. Petter, awesome. That is the first time I've ever heard someone do that on a broadcast. Nice. Now we've got the podium lot. We'll start with Mackenzie Roon. He was able to get himself up into 3rd place. Mackenzie, it was a front row start, but still a podium in the end. Seemed to be a very tough race, and Carson Keane just seemed to be a little bit quicker in the end.
Congrats to David on the win. Carson, insane pacing with Daniel. Definitely kept the pressure on. Yeah, I saw Carson catching me there, a few tenths a lap, and so my strategy completely changed, and so I pitted early to try to get the undercut and save time against Carson, but he just squeaked it out. So yeah, great race all around.
Yeah, and there was a bit of a time where you two started to chip in away at David Holland. Did you ever get hopeful that maybe he'd stop?
Yeah, so I noticed that in the last few laps we were gaining maybe a second and a half on him. I don't know if he made a couple of mistakes or if it was just the tires, but yeah, slightly hopeful. But after last race, seeing how consistent he was, not that hopeful, to be honest.
Yeah, he was bulletproof for every single second of that race. How about next week though? Do you think at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve you might have a chance to top him?
You never know. Maybe we'll see another couple of 2 wides through the chicanes. So anything can happen at that track.
Anything can, and anything will happen. Mackenzie, before we let you go, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to in the YouTube chat?
Just my brother, Terry, and my wife, Liz.
Awesome stuff. We get a lot of families come and join us for you guys, so it's always nice to see that family aspect. Well, Mackenzie, take care. Hopefully we see you back in a week's time.
Yeah, and thanks for the broadcast. I really love you guys broadcasting. Just wanted to call that
Cheers.
out.
Thank you. We love you too. Thank you very much. Take care, Mackenzie. We'll see you soon. Mackenzie Roon, ladies and gentlemen. And then next up, 2nd place man, we've got good old Carson Keane here in the commentary booth with us. Carson, that was a stellar race, but let's start with qualifying. What was the deal? Why couldn't you put a lap in?
Honestly, I wasn't expecting to make the race, so I really wasn't sure where my pace was going to be. So I showed up like right before race start and hadn't really done much practice. So I didn't want to ruin everybody's race into turn 1. So I figured I'd start from the back and just see how things went.
Fair enough. Well, it worked out in the end, I suppose. Up 8 places, managing to squeak out 2nd place in the end. Only 4 seconds off the race lead, though. Did you get hopeful that maybe David would slow down a little bit more?
Honestly, I did towards the last few laps. I mean, David is insane. So is Mackenzie. Those guys both have insane pace. So I was just happy to be up amongst them. So was just having some fun today.
Fair enough. Well, it was a fantastic race indeed. The pace was sensational. How about the pace in a week's time, though? Obviously, home track. You feeling confident about putting a show on for your crowd?
I think so. There's some quick guys in this group, but yeah, definitely looking forward to Montreal and having some fun out there too.
Awesome stuff. Well, better get practicing because Petter Fedding has said he's got a lot of work to do as well. But before we let you go, Carson, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to in the YouTube chat?
Just thanks to the guys for racing today. That was a lot of fun. I think it was relatively clean, except for turn one. It was a little jostling, but that's all good. And then thanks to everybody organizes. Thanks to you guys for broadcasting, and thanks to my wife for getting me home on time to do this race.
Awesome. So she was the racing driver in real life to get you home. You were then the
Absolutely.
racing driver on the track. Nice. I like
Absolutely.
it. Right. Well, take care. Hopefully we'll see you back in a week's time.
Right on. Thanks very much, guys.
See ya. Next up then, sorry to keep him waiting, David Holland. We kept you waiting a little while, sorry for that, but our race winner here, second of the season so far. That was sheer dominance out in front.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, it was still a tough race though, and I almost threw it away. I somehow or another ended up under fueling by about half a lap. I came by the line with 5 laps to go, and I had 4.5 laps of fuel left. So I was like, well, that's not going to work. But luckily, I was able to save enough to make it to the end. The fuel light came on right as I was crossing the finish line, so barely snuck it in.
You gave us hope that maybe the fight for the lead would be on right at the end when Keane and Rune were closing in on you about 2.5 seconds lap. You were like, hang on, what's going on here? It was in fact the fact you'd underfueled. And well, even in the face of underfueling the car, you were still able to win by 4 seconds. So very well done to you. And once again, a dominant drive. A week's time, do you think you're going to be able to replicate the success when we go to Canada?
I hope so. Haven't driven that track in a while, so definitely gonna have to make sure to hit the practice sessions and get back up to speed there. But it is a track that I like, so yeah, hopefully we can have another good result there.
Best of luck to you. And before we let you go, is there anyone watching along? I'm sure you've got tons of fans after the way you've been driving. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
I just want to give a shout out to you guys for the broadcast, and also to Brian for putting together the league. Really appreciate it, y'all. And also my team, Delta Sport. Yeah, thanks guys. See you next week.
Awesome. Take care. See you soon, David. Thank you for being here, and well, for not thanking him for dominating because we wanted to fight for the lead. Anyway, Dara, that was a nice welcome, I suppose, to the Sim Racing for Simpletons and of course the JPB as well. I hope we haven't scared you off too quickly. Well, what did you make of your first race?
It was interesting. I mean, the strategies were good. I mean, Carson King working his way through was very interesting to watch, and that ending, as David Holland said, where he underfueled ever so slightly, gave us a little bit of hope that there might be that battle for the win, but respectably so, he hung on very admirably, and he got to the end. Word out there. But yeah, interesting race. Exciting to see some of the drivers come through the field. Turn 1, I think, I'd love to see that again. I feel bad for Anthony Zeicht. It looked like he was absolutely shoved into that wall on the outside of turn 1. But, I'm sure he'll be back next week and hoping for a better result at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Yeah, indeed. So, and what do you make of that circuit? I mean, it's always an interesting one when we go to it. I mean, especially in open wheel machineries, the walls are always close. The fact it's not a permanent circuit as well always throws some things into the mix.
I feel like Gilles Villeneuve is one of those tracks that if the cars are too fast, it doesn't really work, and if the cars are too slow, it doesn't really work. But these F3 cars are just about in that sweet spot where there's enough downforce on them, but there isn't too much speed. So it is easy. It's possible to go side by side to try and find that line, but you've also got that hairpin, so you can send it down there if you're brave and try and find the position. I mean, we might see a little bit of contact. Wheel rubbing as well, but that's all part of the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and that's the charm of it. And yeah, looking forward to it next week.
Yeah, indeed so. Well, fingers crossed, of course. We hope to see everyone who's been watching along on the JP Broadcasting YouTube channel back because, well, it's the Sim Racer for Simpletons. There's never, ever anything you want to miss. So make sure you are liked, subscribed, and turn the bell on for notifications as well to not miss a single thing that comes your way in terms of sim racing here on the James Parfitt Broadcasting YouTube channel. This has been the Sim Racer for Simpletons. Their Formula 3 Championship took to Suzuka, and what a race it was. My name has been Zach Sweeney. I've had Dara Thacker alongside me in the commentary booth with Dean Biggles pushing the buttons behind the scenes, making the broadcast look nice and pretty, and making sure that we can follow each and every single little bit of action that came your way. From ourselves here at JP Broadcasting, we thank you for watching along, but until next time, it's a very warm goodbye.